Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain, and today I'm going to be doing a Kickstarter preview for this upcoming Kickstarter game, Warbonds Battle for Vitoria. So I want to start by giving a big thank you to the publisher of this game, Punk This Studio. Punk This Studio sent me this pre-production copy of Warbonds to be able to check out and play and film some content with. So thank you. Again, this game will be coming to Kickstarter, currently scheduled to be coming to Kickstarter early February. So very, very soon, probably within the next week from the release time of this video. And I do want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, a great hub for all things Board Game Captain, as well as a link to my Patreon if you're in a position to and like to support the channel, and a link to my Teespring store if you'd like to get some cool Board Game Captain merch. All right, so Warbonds. Now, this is not going to be a full review because a lot of the components are very prototype. So we're not going to go through the components since they are very much subject to change. But we're just going to jump right into the tutorial. I'm going to take you to the table. We're going to run you through a few turns to show you how this game plays. This is not going to be a full-on tutorial because this is a very heavy war game with a lot going on. So we're going to just give you a basic idea in the tutorial of how a few turns would go in this game. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the intricacies of this game, how it plays and how it feels. And I'm going to tell you who I would recommend back this Kickstarter. Okay, so here we are set up to play a game of Warbonds, Battle for Vitoria at 2 players. So I am on this side of the table. I will be playing as the red player, putting these red player markers under all of my units. My only starting unit, of course, being my Warlord, who is Vagabond Goliar Alebreath. He will be the character I will be playing, who will be leading my army.
I'm over on this side. I am the blue player, and I'm going to be playing Tangus the Unchained.
So we have fully set up the board as prescribed by the book for a 2-player game. You have the main board out. We have a bunch of roads set up, and we have some wildlands set up on the table. We have our starting camps and our starting warlords. We also set up the initiative board and have placed our warlord initiative trackers on their starting initiatives. My warlord has an initiative of 1. He is very fast.
Mine has an initiative of 8, and he's very slow.
Yes, and then we're ready to go. I've got the deck of cards for all the units here. I'll be handing them out as people summon units. We each have our cheat sheet booklet, which gives us the stats and abilities of all the units, so we can look through them to figure out who we want to use, as well as, of course, giving you a cheat sheet for your warlord and what recommended units you should take with them. We will be going mostly by the recommendations from the book to show you exactly how these characters are meant to be played. And Lynn has a big plastic tray full of all of the tokens and unit tokens and loyalty tokens and all the different stuff next to her, and she's going to be the bank with all of that for this example game. So now to start with, we move to the initiative table, and the initiative table runs us through who gets to go and in what order. So the first thing you do is you take the initiative token, you run it down all of the tracks for the units. So the first unit that is able to activate on the first turn is going to be my warlord, the Vagabond. Now, again, because he has initiative 1, he is going to get to go first, because the only other thing on the initiative table right now is Lynn's warlord, who is at initiative 8. So each unit, when you activate them, has a choice of doing a movement action and another action, though sometimes there are some actions that are full turn actions, which will take the place of both your movement and your regular action. Now, the warlords will have a bunch of particular actions listed on the side of them, and we have cheat sheets which list a bunch of standard actions that many units or all units can do. So I'm going to choose to first do a move. Now, my movement for my warlord is 5, as listed on his card, so he's going to move up to 5 spaces. He has a movement of regular ground movement, which moving on planes costs 1 movement to enter each plane space. 2, 3, 4. I'm going to move over here, and the reason I'm doing so is because when adjacent to a wildland, I can take an action to deploy a unit on it. Now, later in the turn, when we get to using our camps are also going to be able to summon up 1 guy every round if they want. So because of this, I'm going to actually be able to summon up an extra guy this round because I've moved over by the wildlands. And to start with, I would like to get multiple units out if I can. So for his action, I have summoned up the Council of Mages Educated. Now, the Council of Mages is the first recommended unit for my character to be summoned up on the board. And here is their card with all of their stats. And Lynn has passed me their two cardboard chits. Now, the first one, which represents their unit on the board, gets placed on the wildlands that I am summoning them into, but gets placed on the non-active side because they don't activate till the end of the round, which is going to come later. And the other one gets placed on the initiative tracker, also on the non-active side. And it shows that they have an initiative of 4. So they go as far to the top of the initiative tracker in the column of 4 as they can, which I now have done. And that is the 2 actions for my Warlord, which means I am done with using my Warlord for this round. So now I'm going to move down through the rest of the 1 column. There's nothing there, the 2 and the 3. When I get to the 4, there's my Council of Mages, but they are not active yet. So we just pass them by and move all the way over to the 8 column, where it is Lynn's Warlord's turn.
I can move 4 ground movement. So I am going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 and land on that road. And I am going to deploy vermin bombers.
Oh, I hate those vermin bombers. Last game, you obliterated me with those things. Vermin bombers are these guys riding on giant birds of prey that drop poison bombs on people, and they have a special bomb they get to do. Also, by the way, I forgot to mention and get the tokens from you, and I get 6 activation tokens for my Council of Mages. I just remembered because your vermin bombers also get 1 token as well. So in regard to tokens that you get, you place them on the picture of your card for later use. These are supply tokens used for certain abilities that the particular unit has. In the case of Lynn's vermin bombers, it's for dropping a very special bomb that does splash damage and damages people in multiple areas. So now I have given Lynn her card for her particular version of the vermin bombers, and every version of a particular unit will have multiple versions with different keywords. For instance, the version of the vermin bombers that Lynn just summoned is the perverse vermin bombers, while my Council of Mages is the educated Council of Mages. There are different versions of each so that you can differentiate if, for instance, you and another player summon the same unit. And she has placed her token on the board in the non-active side, just like I did, as well as placing her other token on the initiative table, which is at initiative 5. All right, so now we finish moving through the rest of the initiative track for units. Obviously, there are no more units there, and we move on to the war camp. So Lynn is player 1, and as player 1, her war camp gets to activate first. So Lynn, what are you going to do for your war camp this round?
I'm going to deploy the Adept Archers.
Oh. Which version of the Adept Archers would you like me to grab for you?
Let's go with the Skilled Adept Archers.
Very good. Here you are. Here's your card. And then, of course, Lynn will be placing them just as before on the board and on the initiative table, except in this case, she's summoning them from the camp so they can be placed anywhere within the camp's control area. Now, the camp's control area in the starting level of the camp is up to 1 space away from it, though later you can upgrade your camps, and upgraded camps will have larger control areas. Also, camps have the ability to convert them as a full round action, to convert them to a caravan, and can actually start moving across the board if you think you're winning and you need to move your spawn point closer to your enemy's side of the board. But doing so, of course, since it's a full round action, means that while you are doing this, you will not be able to deploy units from it, and also caravans cannot deploy units from it. So it does take a few turns of you not being able to use it to start moving it closer to your opponent's side. Now, are you all done with your activation of your camp?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to move to me, and I'm going to do my activation of my camp. I am going to deploy the Phalanx, specifically the Banded Phalanx, and I have already taken their card out, and Lynn has given me their tokens. In the same manner, I am going to be placing them adjacent to my camp, and also placing them on the initiative track. Now, in this case, they're initiative 8, which is the same initiative as Lynn's Warlord, but because they were activated and deployed after Lynn's Warlord was added to the initiative track, they go 1 space below them. They'll be a little bit slower than Lynn's Warlord. After that, we move down to the repair and collect sections for the war camps. Now, currently, nothing is going to happen during these parts of the initiative board, because during the repair, we would repair damage done to our war camps, and during the collect, we could collect we could collect loyalty tokens that had been placed on the board over here, which usually is done by if one of your units is either forcibly or you choose to have them leave the board, you can collect loyalty they had on them and redistribute it amongst your other troops. But in this case, of course, none of that has happened yet, so we're going to pass that all by. Then we go to the unit recall, which is where units that are possibly being recalled will go, and here you could either spend loyalty to stop them from being recalled, 1 per unit, or allow them to be recalled and then collect the loyalty they had already collected, like I had said. And then, of course, in the previous section, that could have been redistributed amongst your troops. Loyalty is an important part of the game with the events that happen every round, because there are occasional events where your opponent might be able to force a unit to either be recalled by reducing their loyalty below 0, or even having them switch sides, as long as they are not the opposite of good or evil to your warlord, because evil troops will not join a good warlord and vice versa. Since there are no troops being recalled right now, we're going to go to the rules and events area. The first part of which is to move the dragon, and we're going to go to War Speech. So the War Speech event is a very basic one that lets you start getting some resources. It allows you to either gain 1 leadership for your warlord, which is a basic resource that the warlords use for a lot of other events and use for a lot of their abilities, or you can gain 1 loyalty for each of your troops. There is also a part of this phase later where loyalty can be traded in for leadership at a cost of 3 loyalty for 1 leadership. So generally speaking, 1 leadership is worth about 3 loyalty in this game, which right now, if you were to take the loyalty, you would only be getting 2, because you would get 1 for each of the 2 troops that we have each already summoned onto the board. So Lynn, what would you decide to do? Are you going to take loyalty or leadership?
I'm going to take a leadership for my warlord.
I think that is a good choice. I'm also going to take a leadership for my warlord. Thank you. Then we're going to move on to concede. Now, this is a part of the game where when it is very obvious that your opponent is winning, you can offer that to shake their hand and say, I give up. But of course, it's way too early for that. So then we have the exchange leadership section of the turn, where you could pay 3 loyalty spread out amongst your troops, however they are, to get 1 leadership for your warlord. However, none of us have any loyalty yet. Then we have a part of the turn where end of round effects happen. Then we have the flip and enable part of the turn. Now, during this part of the turn, you flip and enable all of the units that are not currently in the recall area, but are not active. So we're going to be flipping and activating all the units that we just deployed onto the board during this turn, which is 2 units each for each of our sides. And then we hit the start new round part of the turn. So we go all the way back to the start of the initiative phase, and we're going to start the next turn right now. So the first thing we do to start the next turn is we move it down on the initiative track, and the highest initiative again is my warlord, the Vagabond. Okay, so I'm going to activate my warlord, and he has a movement of 5. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and move all the way up here adjacent to the wildlands at the center of the board, and I'm going to take an action to summon up another unit over there. I decided I would like to summon up a second phalanx in the middle of the board, so I'm going to get the phalanx card, and Lynn is going to get me their particular tokens. So this phalanx will be the marching phalanx. Lynn has given me the tokens. I also need 2 supply tokens for them for their abilities. Thank you. And I am going to place them on the board and on the initiative tracker. Now, as you see, when we are deploying our units, we are placing our colored discs under them. There is a number of colored discs that helps limit the number of troops you can have on the board. When a unit dies, you currently place the disc off to the side on the initiative tracker and do not get it back until the end of the turn. This is a very limiting factor to the size of your armies. So now that I am done activating my warlord to deploy that phalanx, I am going to move down the initiative tracker, and the next thing activated are Lynn's adept archers.
Okay, so they're just going to go 1, 2, 3.
Okay, are they going to take an action, or? And 3 is the maximum movement, yes?
No, they're just going to stay there. They don't have the range yet.
Alright, so we'll move on to the initiative. And the next thing on the initiative is my Council of Mages. So I am going to move my Council of Mages one space off of their spot where they are right now on the deploying wildlands, and for their action they are going to deploy another unit on those wildlands. I need to get a bunch of units going before this fight starts. I'm going to deploy a Valkyrie. So just as we've done before, I am placing my Valkyrie on the board and on the initiative board, and they are taking their 1 token. And that is going to be it for the activation of my Council of Mages. And then we move on, and the next unit to be activated in the initiative track are the Vermin Bombers that Lynn summoned up last round.
Okay. Vermin Bombers can move 5.
Yeah, they're very mobile.
And they have a range of 2.
But can only hit ground units, right?
Yes.
Because it's bombs.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, you're in range. This might be the first attack of the game.
Oh,
are you going to do the splash damage big hit?
Yes.
Darn it. All right, so now Lynn has one token, 1 resource token on her Vermin Bombers, and it can be spent for a special action to drop a special bomb that can splash to up to 2 adjacent units. So what she's going to do here is be hitting both my newly summoned Phalanx as well as my Warlord. And what sort of damage does that do?
It does either fire or acid.
Now, FYI, I am resistant to fire with my Phalanx, so you might want to go acid.
So I'm going to do acid.
So now the way that works is, if you are resistant to a type of damage, you get -1 damage per each attack. Each unit has a number of attacks that they do. How many attacks does your Vermin Bombers do?
3.
So now they do 3 attacks, and all attacks default to 1 damage unless there's something that boosts it, which means with 3 attacks at 1 damage each, if she had used fire with the resistance, my Phalanx would have essentially been immune to it. However, if she had built up loyalty, she could have spent loyalty to bypass resistance. Some units, very specially, will even have an immunity. Now that cannot be bypassed, and that just makes all damage of that type them immune to it. So the fact that she has the choice of either either doing acid damage or fire damage is really powerful, because she's already, without spending anything extra, able to bypass certain resistances and immunities. So you are going to be doing 3 damage each, correct me if I'm wrong,
yes,
to my 2 units that are there. So Lynn passed me some dice to keep track of the damage. The current way in the preview copy here to keep track of damage is by using D10s to show how much damage the unit has taken. So I take 3 damage on my Warlord, who has a total of 33 lives, so they're down to 30, and I take 3 damage on the Marching Phalanx. Now the Marching Phalanx had a total of 11 life, and now being a unit, what that actually represents is not a wound, but rather members of the unit that have been killed. Anytime you take damage with a unit, regardless of how much damage they take, attacks done by that unit will have 1 less attack in the future to represent the fact that there are less units available. So normally my Marching Phalanx does 3 attacks, 1 damage each, though it can get more attacks in certain situations, but, and that's just based on its abilities, but it will be at -1 attack, so it'll be down to 2 attacks because of the fact that Lynn got the first strike on it and was able to injure it right away. Well done, Lynn. Moving down through the rest of the 5s and 6s, we reach my Valkyrie unit on the 7s, but of course they are not active yet, so we're going to pass them by and move over to the 8s, and the first unit on the 8s is Lynn's Warlord, who is scary as hell in melee, and I am wondering if they are going to be coming running at me yet.
Yes, he can only move 4, but he is going to move 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh boy.
And then that's it.
Okay, then we move down to my originally summoned Phalanx, which is all the way back here at the back of the board. Now, my Phalanxes only have a movement of 3, but I'm going to come up to try to back up my units in the middle of the board here by moving 3 towards them. For their action, they're going to activate their ability to do a ranged attack, which is the Javelin. They have to pay 1 of their resource tokens to do it, so here's my resource token, and it is a 2 range attack. 2 away from me is, of course, those Vermin Bombers. Now, it deals standard damage. You don't have any sort of resistance to standard damage, do you? But I do get +1 attack versus mounted enemies. You do count as mounted, I believe, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so being that you count as mounted, what's going to happen here is I'm going to deal 4 damage, because it's +1 from the normal 3 attack. It's 4 attack at your vermin bombers, which is actually quite a big hit. Now, being that I am a lawful unit here, I get a loyalty for having done damage within the command range of my boss. So I will get 1 loyalty point and I'll put it on my card. Now, chaotic units, which Lynn is playing with a lot of chaotic units, do the opposite. If their boss does damage, or rather attacks an enemy while they are within the command range of the boss, they will get a loyalty point for that happening. Next, moving on, we bypass again another unit that is not active yet, and now we move into the war camps, and it is Lynn's turn to activate her war camp.
I am going to deploy Begotten Witches.
So now that Lynn has deployed her Begotten Witches, we're going to move on to me, and I am going to deploy an Adept Archers, which, of course, Lynn already has one. I'm going to take the Sniping Adept Archers for my force here, and they get 3 tokens for the Adept Archers. Again, we move through the rest of the bits of the turn that are not relevant at the moment till we get to the rules and events phase. Moving the dragon, we move on to the next event, and we have the Persuade event. The Persuade event says that when the event is triggered, starting with player 1, each player decides whether they want their warlords to persuade an enemy unit. Now, for persuading an enemy unit, it costs normally 2 leadership, but you do get a discount for every trait that particular unit shares with you, whether that be law or chaos, good or evil. Though right now we don't really share much traits with our opponent's troops. So there's probably not much in the way of discounts. Now, for persuading, you can reduce that unit's number of loyalty if they are in your warlord's presence. Your warlord's presence is a stat denoted by a star on their card, which is how many spaces away basically their leadership area goes. Now, if you can persuade an enemy's unit to having negative loyalty, they will either join your side of the battle, or if they are the opposite, good or evil, of what you are, they will just go into recall. Now, I am only really close enough to persuade your vermin bombers, but what are your vermin bombers' traits there? Their alignments?
They're chaos.
So I do not share anything with them, which means I get no discount. And as I only have 1 leadership, I don't have enough to persuade them to the other side. Now, your boss, 1, 2, 3, is not close enough. I believe he's got to, correct me if I'm wrong, a presence of 3. Mm-hmm. He's not close enough to persuade any of my guys. So we're just going to bypass that and then we're going to go to the start of the next round, where I think things are really going to get kicked off here. So we're going to start with me here. And Goyar is going to activate first. Goyar is going to do a full turn action to do meditation. Now, when I do meditation, I gain 1 leadership. I could have done this in the first round, so I would have had more leadership for persuading enemy units, but I preferred to be able to deploy more units. Then, while he is in meditation, all ally units that are within his area of influence, which is up to 3 spaces away from him, can take an action to gain a loyalty. So that is going to be it for his turn. Then we're going to move on, and we get to Lynn's Adept Archers to activate, which are now probably close enough that with a move they can fire.
Yeah, they're going to go 1, 2. Mm-hmm. I'm going to shoot at them.
The phalanx, yes.
But since the phalanx are resistant to the regular damage, I'm going to pay 1 so my bow can deal any damage type.
Now that is an ability specifically of the Adept Archers. They can pay 1 of their resources to do it. So what damage type are you going to dictate? By the way, I'm resistant to fire as well.
Yeah, so I guess, I don't know, let's just do magic, just because it's...
Well, that's easy.
Whatever reason.
I am not resistant to magic. That will bypass my resistances. How much damage, how many attacks do you have coming at me then?
I have 3.
All right, so that's going to up the damage on that particular phalanx to 6, because they'd already taken 3 damage from the vermin bombers, which means they are at less than half life now. They're down to only 5 life. Okay, so is that going to be it for your Adept Archers?
Yes.
All right, so now my Adept Archers get to activate. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to use the ability from my meditation to give my Adept Archers a loyalty. Please pass me 1 loyalty.
How far?
Moving on through the initiative, we're going to move up to my Council of Mages. Now, my Council of Mages normally only has a movement of 3. But they have the ability called Mobile Levitation, where if I spend 2 of their resource tokens, which they start with a total of 6 of, I can give them the ability to levitate, which gives them 7 movement. So they are now going to move very, very rapidly. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to stop right there. And then I'm going to spend 1 more token to use their spell book. They have to pay 1 to do their spell book. It is a ranged attack that deals any damage type and gets +1 attack versus elemental. Now, I do not believe your vermin bombers are elemental. Is that correct?
No, they are not.
Okay, so they will not get the +1 attack versus them, but they do get 3 attack coming at your vermin bombers who were already hit.
Okay, so they have 7 damage out of 10.
Okay, so 3 life left. So moving on, we now have the Begotten Witches.
We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
And they do have a range of 2, so they are going to do a magic volley at the phalanx.
Okay, and how much damage will that be? How many attack will that be coming at the phalanx?
That is 2 damage.
That brings me up to 8 damage on that phalanx out of its total of 11 life. Getting pretty weak considering how tough they were. Is that going to be it for your Begotten Witches?
Yes.
All right, well, your vermin bombers are up, and I wasn't able to kill them. But at least they've already used up their token for the big splash damage, because now I have 3 guys all next to each other, and that would have been bad.
True. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, you're coming around to attack my warlord.
And they're going to attack the warlord.
Are they doing anything special or just normal?
No, they can't. It's just, so he's going to do two attack.
All right, so that will bring up the total damage to my warlord to 5, which is a good start on starting to pick away at his huge 33 life total. Will that be it for your vermin bombers?
Yes.
All right, so moving past them, we move on to my Valkyries, which I just summoned. Now, Valkyries are strong and they are fast. They have a movement of 5. So I'm going to take my Valkyries and go 1, 2, 3, 4, come running up into the battle here. And I am going to attack the vermin bombers who have never taken the movement to try to fly up high and are still technically at ground level, so I can actually hit them in melee. I'm going to use the Thunder Spear against them, which will do 3 attack. It can either be standard or lightning. Are you resistant to either?
No.
Okay, so it's fine. And do you count as armored? Because I do get +1 attack versus armored enemies. All right, so it'll be 3 attack coming at your vermin bombers. Is that enough to take them out?
Yes.
All right, so I kill the vermin bombers. So the card will be returned to the deck, and their tokens will be removed from the board and the initiative tracker. Moving on, it is now time for Lynn's Warlord to activate, and they are in range to get up and do some damage. And this is what I'm always afraid of with this particular Warlord, because this is quite possibly the most deadly Warlord in melee in the whole game right now.
Okay, so he's going to move 1, 2, 3.
Okay, right in the thick of it as he likes it.
And he's going to attack the Council of Mages.
Now this is where you actually have a character who does, by themselves, different amounts of damage per attack, because Lynn's Warlord gets +1 damage per attack under all normal circumstances. Now, how much attack does he have?
5.
So that means 10 damage. That is a 1-hit kill to my Council of Mages who only have 9 life. Goodbye, Council of Mages. You have served me well. I will remove them from my card from my area and put it back in and remove them from the board and the initiative track. Next, we activate my first phalanx, the banded phalanx there. And I'm going to attack Lynn's Warlord with the banded phalanx. Now, the banded phalanx has not taken any damage, so they get their full damage of their full attack of 3. However, it does normal damage. And correct me if I'm wrong, your Warlord is resistant to normal damage, yes?
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna have to wind up here and do a power strike. I'm going to spend their 1 loyalty to do a power strike to ignore your resistance. And they are going to do 3 damage to your warlord. Then my second warband is going to move off from the wildland spot at the center of the board. Actually, I'm going to move to the other side here. And they are going to take an action to recruit another unit to the wildland spot on the middle of the board. Now here you can get an idea, this is a good idea of exactly how this game plays. There's lots of maneuvering around, taking different actions, attacking, and trying to optimize your abilities, optimize your resistances or your ability to bypass resistances, summon the right units that can do extra damage to your enemy, etc. There's a lot more to this game, and there's really not the ability in a decent sized video to run through all of the options here because there's so many units and so many options and so many unique abilities. But one other thing I just did want to draw attention to, because Lynn was getting very close to possibly declaring a challenge to a duel against me, is the duel. Lynn's character is very tooled up for duels, and they are on the next turn right within striking range of possibly being able to challenge my leader to a duel. So we're going to skip ahead and pretend nothing else really happened. And Lynn, why don't you show what would happen if you were to challenge me to a duel?
So I want to move there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say I'm challenging you to a duel.
Now I could refuse the duel by spending 1 of my leadership, though if I accept, we have to do a full round of combat. Now, a round of combat happens where most normal abilities, most normal attacks are still available, though there are some slight alterations and some special abilities are not available in a duel. There is a comprehensive list and a little board that is given that gives you a reminder of how it all works. During the duel, it remains honorable as long as no nearby allies jump in. You can have allies jump in to take the damage for you or jump in to attack your enemy, but then your side of the duel is no longer honorable. And at the end of each pair of attacks from both sides in the duel, you get the option to surrender in the duel and leave the duel. Now, if you do so and your opponent's side was honorable, nearby allies will lose loyalty. Now, in the case here, I would be very hesitant to want to do that because my nearby allies all are at 0 loyalty. If they go into negative loyalty, they'll wind up being recalled. This can be a very quick way for a very duel-centric warlord like Lynn's to force a lot of my units to leave the board, to no longer be serving me because they would no longer believe that I am honorable or brave to fight in said duel. Now, if we both choose not to end the duel, we can keep fighting. And I do have some abilities that can help me against Lynn's warlord, like giving myself resistances to the kinds of damage that Lynn's warlord does, so that I could fight on in the duel and possibly even do well, even though hers is a warlord that is more duel-centric than mine is. That said, that is basically how you play the game of Warbonds, Battle for Vitoria. So now we're going to head back over. I'm going to talk about how this game plays and feels. I'm going to tell you who I think should back this Kickstarter. Okay, welcome back. So I did forget to go over the stats in the intro, so I want to go over them quickly now. The game is listed at 2 to 5 players. I want to say that I feel like this is a 2-player game, and it shines at 2 players. The other player counts are in there just to have some variety of play. But because there is the possibility for a player elimination in a larger than 2-player game, I would recommend this game at 2 players. Larger player counts can be iffy because the game can go on multiple hours, and someone could get eliminated early if people gang up on them. The game is listed at 14 and up, which is a good age estimation because there is a lot going on here. There is a lot of complexity in this game. And it is listed as 60 to 180 minutes with a lot of practice and at 2 players. Yeah, you can get it down there, but your first few games are going to be significantly longer. The first game I played of this while working through the rules, because there was a lot when it comes to the rules in here, was significantly longer. It was about twice the max of that, even at 2 players. Now, granted, after playing it a few times, you are going to get significantly faster, even over the course of a single game. In your first game, by the time you get to the end, your turns are going to be coming lickety-split. It's one of those games that has a huge learning curve, and the more you play, the quicker you will become. All right, so first let's talk about some downsides with this game. Now, this is a very heavy war game. This is not for everybody. I quite like heavy war games, but not everybody does. So if it's not your cup of tea, this is probably not the game for you. If you're not into lots of keeping track of different stats and immunities and vulnerabilities, etc., maybe not the game for you. That said, if you do love heavy war games that have a lot of content to sink your teeth into, this almost certainly will be the game for you. Now, there are some slight balance issues, but I know they are still working on them because while I was trying out this game, they sent me an email with an update, a single rule update to help with balance issues. My current biggest balance issues have to do with balancing the various warlords. There's one warlord in particular that feels rather underpowered to me, but that's an easy fix. They can adjust their rules during the Kickstarter while they're working on continuing to balance all the warlords. I would like to see more warlords, and I would like to see a little bit better warlord balance in some cases. Though, generally speaking, in the case of that particular warlord, which is the one warlord that is neutral, I feel like they're a little bit underpowered. Also, you could use them as a handicap warlord for if, for instance, you keep winning against a particular opponent. Maybe you pick that warlord and be like, let's see if I can beat you using what is generally considered one of the weaker warlords in the game. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Though if that is the case, maybe they should outline it in the book and let you know that that is kind of a weaker warlord. It's also possible, though, that through my play, I haven't fully figured out all of the intricacies of how to play that warlord and what specific units work super well with them. But at the moment, I do feel like they're a bit underpowered compared to certain other of the warlords there. Now, positives. Like I said before, this is a super heavy war game. And if you are super into war games with lots of statistics, lots of learning curve and lots of things to figure out slowly as you play, this game is fantastic for that. It's absolutely amazing. The designers take a lot of inspiration from things from like role-playing games and even role-playing video games in regard to weaknesses and resistances to certain types of attacks, as well as the alignment system, because of course there is chaotic evil and lawful evil, neutral and chaotic good and lawful good, and that has an effect on gameplay. The morale system is brilliant. I love that you gain loyalty in your troops for doing certain actions, depending on the type of troops and the type of warlord you have. And then if your opponent can make your troops lose enough loyalty, they can either convince them to switch sides at certain parts of the game, or just basically convince them to desert you in the middle of the battle, which is really, really brilliant. I also really like the initiative system in this. The initiative system is really cool. I love that you have the board out. You place the tokens out there. It helps to really balance the units because more powerful units are generally slower. The warlord in the tutorial that Lynn was playing, I generally consider to be one of the most powerful warlords in the game. But to balance that out, he's super slow. He's generally going last, which gives you a chance to gang up on him with a lot of guys and really do a bunch of damage before he gets to go and turn around and just kills a unit in one swing. There is a lot to like here. The units are all different and unique. The combinations of different units being used with different leaders. There's a lot of interesting combinations of effects and abilities to discover. This is the sort of game that slowly reveals itself to you. You're not going to fully get it for most of your first game of this, but it's the sort of game that you will go back to and you will look at without even playing it and just be looking at the units and be like, oh wow, this unit has an ability that'll work really awesome with this other unit or this warlord, this particular warlord, and that is really awesome. I love that about it. This is a game that you will want to play again and again and revisit and analyze and maybe even overanalyze. It does have definitely, for certain players, the susceptibility to analysis paralysis, but most heavy war games have that. So bottom line, I would say rules-wise, this game seems really cool and the sort of game that I personally would very much like. So what I'm saying is, if you are into heavy war games with a lot of variety of units and commanders and asymmetrical player powers and really lets you delve into the nitty-gritty of abilities and effects of said units, this is the game for you, and you should definitely back this Kickstarter. This is definitely a heavyweight, very complicated, very interesting, a lot of bookkeeping, which can be a positive or a negative depending on your point of view, war strategy game. It's very interesting to see how the different types of attacks work better or worse against different enemies. It's very interesting to see how resistances certain with certain attacks or certain types of attacks would make a unit more valuable depending on which units your opponent has already chosen to field, which can be very interesting, can make you change your strategy and tactics on the fly because suddenly your opponent takes some units that you were not expecting them to field with that particular warlord, and then you're like, well, I need people who are resistant to that kind of damage, or I need people that do a certain kind of damage, or I need units that can fly, or I need units that have ranged attacks so they can hit the flying units, because when they're up there, they're not usually able to be hit by melee attacks. So all of this together makes this a very deep gaming experience. And if any of that is something that appeals to you, if you're the kind of person that just loves all of that sort of deep gaming experience, huge learning curve, games that you really can spend a lot of time exploring before you fully understand the capabilities of all of the units present, then yeah, again, you should back this Kickstarter. There you have it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns on this video, feel free to put them in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please share it on all forms of social media. And until next time, game on.